Throughout history, many ruthless governments have used secret police organizations to carry out anything from intelligence gathering against citizens to terror and mass murder. While the majority are modern, they all share a harsh agenda of terror and violence against their populace. Here are 10 of the most ruthless, terrifying secret police agencies in mostly modern history. Number 10. STASI. The STASI was the secret police force of Communist East Germany during the Cold War. The STASI, founded in 1950, borrowed many of its cues from the Soviet Union's KGB. Its ties were so close that they shared offices in both Germany and Russia and had political advantages in both countries throughout the Cold War. According to estimates, the STASI was primarily an intelligence service, with one STASI informant for every 160 East German civilians. Every area of East German life was infiltrated with such numbers. Schools, hospitals, and industrial plants all had informants, as did every apartment building in the country. During the 1950s and 1960s, the STASI engaged in arrest and torture. Still, by the early 1970s, the secret police had moved on to a far more productive campaign of psychological torture, disrupting a suspected dissident's personal life through a smear campaign, breaking into someone's home to reorganize objects, and making threatening phone calls, among other less obvious but ongoing provocations. Some victims of STASI psychological harassment had mental breakdowns or even committed suicide. After 40 years, the STASI disbanded with the fall of East Germany. Number 9. OCRB. The Central Office of Banditry Repression, or OCRB, was a covert police unit in the Central African Republic from the early 1990s to the present. Following a series of mutinies and widespread disorder throughout the country, the crew was entrusted with tracking down looters and criminals. The OCRB quickly rose to prominence as a feared secret police and intelligence organization that showed no mercy to people suspected of banditry. The OCRB soon decided who would be tortured or executed for alleged crimes, guilty or not, without a trial. Many crimes by the police force itself have gone unpunished, according to a similar French agency with which the African OCRB frequently collaborated. And a particularly effective method of torture, le café, in which one is beaten with a baton and then forced to walk an excruciating distance, has become commonplace in interrogations of suspected bandits. Number 8. Bureau for the Repression of Communist Activities. The Bureau for the Repression of Communist Activities, or BRAC, was a Cuban secret police agency run by President Fulgencio Batista in the 1950s, known for its brutality in combating the July 26th movement. Mariano Faguet, who rose to prominence as a Nazi hunter during Batista's first term in office from 1940 to 1944, a counter-espionage unit that hunted down Nazi and fascist agents, was in charge of the Bureau. BRAC agents opened fire on an anti-Batista demonstration organized by the Federation of University of Students in Havana on December 7, 1955. When police opened fire on the gathering, several activists were injured, including Camilo Cienfuegos. The BRAC, which was aided in part by the CIA, was most famous for bringing Fidel Castro and his revolutionaries to Cuba during the July 26th movement. After Batista fled to Spain in 1959, as communist troops advanced on Havana, the BRAC was disbanded. Beginning in 1956, the CIA assisted and fostered the creation of BRAC. Number 7. Milice de Volontaires de la Sécurité Nationale. The Tonton Macoute, or simply the Macoute, was a special operations squad founded in 1959 by dictator François Papa Doc Duvalier as part of the Haitian paramilitary force. In 1970, the militia was renamed the Volontaires de la Sécurité Nationale, Volunteers of National Security, VSN. This force was named after the Tonton Macoute, Uncle Gunnysack, a Haitian mythological boogeyman who kidnaps and punishes misbehaving youngsters by snaring them in a gunny sack, a macoute, and taking them away to be eaten for breakfast. The MVSN was established as a paramilitary group that only reported to Duvalier to eliminate any perceived threats to the president's power, of which there were many. During Duvalier and his son's reign of terror in Haiti, the MVSN was responsible for widespread rape, torture, disappearances, and executions. The Tonton Macoute felt so intimidated that they began burning individuals alive or stoning them to death. Many bodies were frequently displayed in public as a warning to Haitians and to demonstrate Duvalier's power. During Duvalier's and his son's reigns, the MVSN is thought to have killed around 60,000 Haitians. Number 6. SAVAK. From 1957 until the Iranian Revolution in 1979, the SAVAK was the Shah of Iran's secret police service. SAVAK was an extraordinarily restrictive police force in a culture that dealt with dissenters quickly, thanks to CIA training. SAVAK devoted most of its resources to filtering out and torturing either Shia or communist opponents to the Shah's reign, using methods like an electric shock, removal of teeth and fingernails, and treatment with boiling water. While executions were not as common as other secret police agencies, torture was common. Many political prisoners were held in solitary confinement for long periods, deprived of sleep, and burned with cigarettes, grills, or acid. After Iran's revolution in 1979, SAVAK was ostensibly disbanded, and a new Iranian secret police unit, Savama, took over, which was just as feared as its predecessor. While Savama was a new police organization in name, many historians believe it was simply a continuation of its predecessor, employing the same tactics. Number 5. Securitate. The Romanian Securitate, one of the most feared secret police agencies behind the Iron Curtain during the Cold War, was created in 1948 with Soviet Union assistance. The Securitate, which was also one of the most violent secret police groups, was in charge of monitoring and spying on Romanian residents and their arrests, tortures, and killings. Every aspect of Romanian life was under surveillance, with nearly 500,000 informants working for the Securitate alone. Even the smallest criticism of the regime might result in severe punishment. With 1 in every 43 Romanians employed by the Securitate, it was practically impossible for opponents of the dictatorship to organize in significant numbers. The Securitate was also involved in brutally suppressing dissident movements in Romania, beginning in the late 1960s, when dictatorial ruler Nicolae Ceausescu was in power. Following Ceausescu's demise in 1989, the Securitate lasted another 2 years before being dismantled and reorganized by the Romanian parliament. Number 4. SANTEBAL. The SANTEBAL, a Khmer term meaning keeper of the peace, was the secret police of the Khmer Rouge's Democratic Kampuchea regime in Cambodia. The Cambodian SANTEBAL began as a covert police organization under the Khmer Rouge administration, but eventually evolved into a ruthless extermination squad. SANTEBAL maintained peace and security in Cambodia, while also overseeing the Khmer Rouge's notorious prison camps. They were responsible for tens of thousands of executions at the country's roughly 150 prison camps. Tuol Sleng, the most notorious of the camps, detained up to 20,000 detainees between 1976 and 1978. SANTEBAL was also a key player in the Khmer Rouge's Cambodian genocide. Nearly 2 million people were killed by the Khmer Rouge and their secret police in less than 11 years. Number 3. OPRICHNIKI. The fearsome OPRICHNIKI, Tsar Ivan the Terrible's secret police force tasked with governing Russia's Oprichnina territory and enforcing the Tsar's policy of violent punishments of state opponents, was only active for 7 years, from 1565 to 1572, but their actions are legendary. The Oprichniki, dressed eerily like monks and with a symbol of a severed dog's head and a broom, led horrific campaigns of terror against possible rebellions, real or imagined, that the Tsar thought to put down. Their executions were brief and fast, and evidence was typically sparse at best. Impalement, boiling alive, roasting over an open flame, and even drawing and quartering were Oprichniki's torture and death methods. The massacre at Novgorod, when 1,500 nobility and anywhere from 3 to 30,000 more people were slaughtered, which reduced Novgorod to a shell of a city, was the Oprichniki's most famous action. Fearing that the Oprichniki's power had grown to levels beyond the Tsar's control, Ivan compelled the group to disband in 1572, making it illegal to even mention their name. Number 2. NKVD. Aside from the gulags, the NKVD had a crucial role in Stalin's genocide in Ukraine, where millions died of starvation in the Great Purge of the Communist Party and the Red Army between 1934 and 1940. Anyone accused of being a state or Stalin's enemy was detained, tortured, and either transported to the gulags or murdered during the purge. Between 1937 and 1938, the NKVD was responsible for the arrest of approximately 2 million people. Of those held, nearly 700,000 were executed, at a rate of about 1,000 per day. The NKVD was just as ruthless when war broke out after the purge, perpetrating war crimes like the Katyn massacre. Following Stalin's death in 1953, Nikita Khrushchev ended the NKVD's horrors, with many living victims being acquitted of their crimes. Number 1. Gestapo. The Gestapo is obviously at the top of this list. Second only to Stalin's secret police organization, Hitler's Gestapo tormented Nazi Germany for 13 years, serving as the Nazi regime's principal instrument for suppressing opposition, terrorizing and rounding up Jews, and later as a key actor in the Holocaust. The Gestapo's control evolved as the Nazi Party apparatus grew, eventually falling under Heinrich Himmler's leadership during World War II. As a result, the Gestapo's role shifted from being a secret police service tasked with gathering intelligence and oppressing Nazi opponents within Germany to including those in conquered regions. During the war, the Gestapo took on the role of a paramilitary organization. Along with the SS, Himmler's Gestapo played a key part in carrying out the final solution, from the destruction of ghettos through the transfer of captives to concentration camps. Following Germany's defeat, the Gestapo was designated a criminal organization, and many of its members were hanged for war crimes at the Nuremberg trials. Conclusion. The various secret police services within the Soviet Union and the Nazi Gestapo were cunning and brutal in their unique ways. Still, the STASI was probably better than all of them put together for various reasons. They had only a few good impacts throughout history. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.